The center of the universe is right between your eyes, but home is where the heart is. Written by Matthew J. Pallamary. Narrated by Russell Newton. No matter how you choose to define yourself, in the end, you and you alone are the one who does the defining. If you define yourself according to the judgment and expectations of others, you have lost yourself to a no-win situation. Because no matter what you do, it is impossible to please everyone. Yet, with so many voices, thoughts, and impulses competing for your time, attention, and energy, how do you find a balance that brings peace? Where is the center? The true center where inner peace can be found lies in the eye of the storm that everything in your inner and outer life revolves around. And this can only be found by practicing conscious awareness, which is an act of personal will. By paying attention and doing the challenging work that is constantly under assault and derailed by the spinning maelstrom of the monkey mind that is the ego, or more accurately, egos that make up our inner lives, we have the ability to unify these disparate energies that spin through us with their own agendas. All of this happens in our minds when we interpret and define our experience of reality at the choice point where we reside between objectivity and subjectivity. If we focus on paying attention, we will develop what can be called witness consciousness and discover the meaning of the expression, where your attention goes, there your energy goes. If cultivated, witness consciousness becomes the self-created focal point produced by harnessing the energy of awareness that takes responsibility for all of our thoughts and actions by paying attention and simply observing. The Zen concept of non-attachment provides a good example of what witness consciousness entails, which is characterized as a practice of presence and mindfulness, while not allowing our sense of well-being to rely upon anything other than our own presence of awareness. It means to be in the world, but not of the world. This is different from detachment, which is distancing ourselves from the world out of disinterest, with an aloofness that separates us from the rest of the world, resulting in escapism, another form of suffering. Non-attachment means that our happiness is no longer defined by anything outside of us. It is selfless because our sense of self is no longer inserted into every situation. We are no longer self-centered, and we can become single-pointed in our awareness of other people. If we allow our sense of self to be emotionally swayed by everything that appears to us, including people, places, perceptions, thoughts, sensations, events, experiences, and all seeming things, then our emotions will forever be taking us on a roller coaster of ups and downs, swinging between joy and disaster. Our sense of well-being will always be based on what we allow ourselves to be emotionally attached to. And when we become attached to something, our happiness is based on a shifting duality that defines us by the outside world rather than our true inner nature. Witness consciousness represents freedom that comes from a self-realization of the truth that you, the consciousness that resides at the center of the universe that you are taking charge of and responsibility for, cannot be affected by anything. It is only the egoic minds that make you believe otherwise. Gurdjieff, an influential mystic and spiritual leader of the early 20th century, characterized witness consciousness in one of his lectures. Instead of the discordant and often contradictory activity of different desires, there is one single I, whole, indivisible, and permanent. There is individuality, dominating the physical body and its desires and able to overcome both its reluctance and its resistance. Instead of the mechanical process of thinking, there is consciousness, and there is will, that is, a power not merely composed of various, often contradictory desires belonging to different I's, but issuing from consciousness and governed by individuality or a single and permanent I. Only such a will can be called free, for it is independent of accident and cannot be altered or directed from without. Our 5 primary mechanisms of perception come from our sense receptors: taste, sight, touch, smell, and hearing. With the exception of our sense of touch, which comes to us through all parts of our bodies, our other 4 senses come through our head, which filters and puts them together into the unique perspective that we, as individuals, harbor, whether we define the world through rose-colored glasses or the dingy windows of a depressed outlook. Aside from the subject-object ground zero that puts the center of our universe right between our eyes, where we decide what our reality consists of, according to our interpretation of these impressions, this location is the most logical place to locate it, based on the construction of our body and the way our senses are arrayed about our head. This focus of awareness, whether physical, mental, or metaphysical, points to the notion of the third eye, also called the mind's eye or inner eye, that represents a mystical and esoteric concept that refers to a speculative, invisible eye, reputed to provide perception beyond ordinary sight. This third eye is considered to be the extension of what the mind perceives in the form of a subconscious awareness of the surroundings and interactions of the environment. In some spiritual traditions, the third eye refers to the gate that leads to inner realms and spaces of higher consciousness, and in our present New Age spirituality, it often symbolizes a state of enlightenment or the evocation of mental images having deep personal, spiritual, or psychological significance. Some Christian teachings view the concept of the third eye as a metaphor for non-dualistic thinking, the way the mystics see. The rudiments of a biological basis for the mind's eye is found in the deeper portions of the brain below the neocortex, where the center of perception exists. The neocortex is characterized as a sophisticated memory storage warehouse, where data received as input from sensory systems is compartmentalized via the cerebral cortex, which allows shapes to be identified. Given the lack of filtering input produced internally, we have the ability to hallucinate and see things that aren't received as external input, but as internal. Not all people have the same internal perceptual ability. For many, when their eyes are closed, the perception of darkness prevails. However, some people are able to perceive colorful, dynamic imagery. In Theosophy, the third eye is typically related to the pineal gland. According to this theory, humans had, in far ancient times, an actual third eye in the back of the head with a physical and spiritual function. Over time, as humans evolved, this eye atrophied and sank into what today is known as the pineal gland. Dr. Rick Strassman has hypothesized that the pineal gland, which maintains light sensitivity, is responsible for the production and release of DMT, dimethyltryptamine, an entheogen which he believes could be excreted in large quantities at the moments of birth and death. The pineal gland is a small endocrine gland in the vertebrate brain with a shape that resembles a pine cone, hence its name. It's located near the center of the brain, between the two hemispheres, tucked in a groove where the two halves of the thalamus join. From the point of view of biological evolution, the pineal gland represents a kind of atrophied photoreceptor, and in the epithalamus of some species of amphibians and reptiles, it is linked to a light-sensing organ known as the parietal eye, which is also called the pineal eye or third eye. Philosopher René Descartes believed the pineal gland to be the principal seat of the soul. Phenomenology is the Western philosophical tradition that has most forcefully called into question the modern assumption of a single, wholly determinable, objective reality, and it has its source in Descartes' well-known separation of the thinking mind, or subject, from the material world of things or objects. This philosophy formed the basis for the divide and conquer Western scientific method, which has shown us many things, but ultimately falls short in comprehending the vastness of reality the way that shamans who are in touch with the natural world do. Instead of showing us more, our divide and conquer mentality has largely resulted in isolating us through technology and civilization in a divide that has grown by greater and greater degrees in modern times. In terms of this growing separation, French phenomenologist Maurice Merleau-Ponty stated, "All my knowledge of the world, even my scientific knowledge, is gained from my own particular point of view, or from some experience of the world without which the symbols of science would be meaningless. The whole universe of science is built upon the world as directly experienced, and if we want to subject science itself to rigorous scrutiny and arrive at a precise assessment of its meaning and scope, we must begin by reawakening the basic experience of the world, of which science is the second-order expression. To return to things themselves is to return to that world which precedes knowledge, of which knowledge always speaks, and in relation to which every scientific schematization is an abstract and derivative sign language, as is geography in relation to the countryside in which we have learnt beforehand what a forest, a prairie, or a river is. Regardless of our conception of the third eye or the mind's eye, whether physical, mental, or metaphysical, we cannot disregard the fact that the primary focus of our awareness and the creation of reality as we know it lies in our subjective interpretation of a world that exists through us and around us. Aside from these physical, mental, and subjective indicators of the location Descartes refers to as the seat of the soul, for the more scientific-minded among us, there are objective indicators evident in physics, the branch of science concerned with the nature and properties of matter and energy that includes mechanics, heat, light and other radiation, sound, electricity, magnetism, and the structure of atoms. This phenomenon is known as the observer effect, which is the fact that simply observing a situation necessarily changes it. Physicists have discovered that even passive observation of quantum phenomena can, in fact, change it. No matter how you characterize the subject-object paradox, the fact of the matter is that in the end it comes down to a matter of perception, something that brings us all back to our primordial roots. Who better to teach us about the nature of perception than the ancient masters of perception themselves, shamans, who trained to master extreme altered states of consciousness that makes them masters of a flexible perspective, which gives them the ability to navigate multi-dimensional realms and energies that the uninitiated can scarcely imagine. The world's oldest profession is not what we've been told by popular culture. The real world's oldest profession is shamanism, which is an amalgam of the world's oldest professions with roots that range well beyond our historical stereotypes of witch doctors, wild men, and demonically possessed primitives. Among other things, shamans were the first doctors, performing artists, musicians, storytellers, teachers, priests, psychologists, and magicians who performed critical functions in their societies. Magicians, whether modern entertainers or indigenous tribal sorcerers, work with the malleable texture of perception. Ecologist, philosopher, and sleight-of-hand magician David Abram, Ph.D., tells us in his brilliant work on language and perception titled The Spell of the Sensuous, in tribal cultures, that which we call magic takes its meaning from the fact that humans, in indigenous and oral context, experience their own consciousness as simply one form of awareness among many others. The traditional magician cultivates an ability to shift out of his or her common state of consciousness precisely in order to make contact with the other organic forms of sensitivity and awareness with which human existence is entwined. Only by temporarily shedding the accepted perceptual logic of his culture can the sorcerer hope to enter into relation with other species on their own terms. Only by altering the common organization of his senses will he be able to enter into a rapport with the multiple, non-human sensibilities that animate the local landscape. It is this, we might say, that defines a shaman: the ability to readily slip out of the perceptual boundaries that demarcate his or her particular culture, boundaries reinforced by social customs, taboos, and most importantly, the common speech or language, in order to make contact with and learn from the other powers in the land. His magic is precisely this heightened receptivity to the meaningful solicitations, songs, cries, gestures, of the larger, more than human field. Magic, then, and its perhaps most primordial sense, is the experience of existing in the world made up of multiple intelligences, the intuition that every form one perceives, from the swallow swooping overhead to the fly on a blade of grass, and indeed the blade of grass itself, is an experiencing form, an entity with its own predilections and sensations, albeit sensations that are very different from our own. The magic of shamanism constitutes a prehistoric belief system that not only carries the same traditions and practices across cultures worldwide, it also continues to infuse our world with deeper meaning. Shamans were the first medical specialists in indigenous communities whose traditional methods have been effective in treating both physical and psychological ailments. The chemical components of plants used in shamanic healing rites have the potential to be building blocks for new drugs or cures for such scourges as cancer, heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, and many others. The World Health Organization estimates that 80% of the people in developing countries still rely on traditional medicine for their primary healthcare needs. Without money, access, or faith in modern facilities, indigenous people depend on shamans and herbal healers for their survival. Shamans also play a crucial role in helping scientists to discover the potentials of plants. As one scientist has said, each time a medicine man dies, it is as if a library has been burned down. When asked about the roots of his tradition, an aging jungle healer stated, "I am a plant man. My father was a plant man, as was his father before him, and his father before him, as far back as can be remembered." This simple statement is living testimony to prehistoric wisdom still being passed on through myths, practices, and belief systems kept alive through oral traditions, the way they have for thousands of years, from a distant past with roots that extend well beyond anything conceivable in our present information age, and in many respects, far removed from it. There is added depth to the uses of plants and other healing knowledge carried in the cultural collective that can only be accessed through direct, subjective experience, learned in visionary states engendered in a multitude of ways, aside from, or in combination with, entheogenic plants. Among these methods, fasting, dancing, extreme diets, vision quests, ordeals, and many other time-tested methods known to alter consciousness. In the Peruvian Amazon and throughout much of South America, the primary shamanic healing practice is centered around the Ayahuasca vine, referred to as the mother of the plants. In these traditions, Mother Ayahuasca works with a multitude of other teacher plants, each with their own unique healing properties in special diets and treatments referred to as dietas. Though it is the name of the actual vine, Ayahuasca refers to an entheogenic brew made out of the Ayahuasca vine known as Banisteriopsis caapi, and the Psychotria viridis leaf, referred to as chacruna, a dimethyltryptamine, DMT, containing plant species. In the Quechua languages, Aya means spirit, soul, corpse, dead body, and huasca means rope and woody vine or liana. The word ayahuasca has been variously translated as liana of the soul, liana of the dead, and Spirit Liana. This brew, made from the two plants, is taken in a ceremonial setting where it induces healing, cleansing, and purging, as well as intense visionary states that communicate information in non-rational ways through alien-feeling symbols, concepts, emotions, thoughts, vistas, and other mixed perceptions. Dense information unfolds through rapidly transforming geometric colors and patterns, often in the form of synesthesia, where perceptions cross. While all of the senses are heightened and transformed in inexplicable ways, what stands out in these altered states is that sound can be seen, color can be heard, and feeling can come in hues and colors that defy description. Much of the traditional music of the Peruvian Amazon plays an integral part in Ayahuasca ceremonies. Songs are sung, and music is performed as offerings to honor, flatter, and serenade the mother, showing respect, as well as the healing and helping spirits of other plants and animal allies working with her, so they will gift the petitioner with power, healing, wisdom, and other special gifts. In jungle lore, Mother Ayahuasca is the river that you journey upon, and the sacred songs known as the Icaros are the boats that carry you on that journey. The multisensorial, multidimensional ayahuasca journey is something that can never be fully articulated in any medium, and can only truly be known through direct experience. By gaining experiential knowledge given to them by the plants and the patterns of Mother Nature herself, shamans understand on an intuitive level that nature's designs are energy flows. Since prehistoric times, they have learned how the matrices of nature work together, and with this knowledge, they live in accord with these forces by embodying a balance of power that puts them in harmony with the forces of nature, instead of in opposition to them, the way we are in today's world. Aside from being a bridge between the worlds, the path of the shaman is to become a man or woman of power, and the way to accomplish that is to learn how to master energy in all of its manifestations and dimensions. Learning how to master the energies of altered states puts the shaman in a multitude of unpredictable and inexplicable subjective experiences that alter their perception of reality by changing their experience in the same way that a radio receiver changes the station it is receiving by tuning in to a different carrier frequency. By continually changing stations and assimilating different realms and experiences, including plant and animal realms, the shaman breaks the station lock of consensual reality, which brings them a greater flexibility of perception, freeing their perspective from the narrow way most people experience the world. This is especially true in indigenous groups who, by breaking the perceptual lock that most of us live in, give equal weight and validity to waking, dreaming, and visions, so that they all cross over each other into one big palette of experience. This freeing of perception brings the magic and flexibility of the non-physical realities of dreaming and visions into the present moment of their waking world of consensual reality, rewarding them with an expanded awareness and fuller presence in whatever transitory moment they happen to be experiencing at any given instant, regardless of the energies or realities they may be tuned in to. In spite of its seeming solidity and permanence, the physical waking world of consensual reality that we all share is, in fact, transitory. This inarguable point is driven home by the inevitability of our impending death. This has been The Center of the Universe is Right Between Your Eyes, but Home is Where the Heart Is. Written by Matthew J. Pallamary. Narrated by Russell Newton. Copyright 2017 by Matthew J. Pallamary. Production copyright by Matthew J. Pallamary.